we actually asked AI to ask you the final question that we have. In what ways is AI reshaping manual roles across industry?
So it's kind of the opposite of what people originally thought. So many people think like, oh, intelligence, AI is going to take these, manual labor jobs, because traditionally those are perhaps wrongly thought of as, low-level thinking. They're not. But in fact, what we're seeing now with the LLM revolution is those traditionally knowledge sector jobs now being replaced. Basically anything where for your job you would sit in front of a computer, the large majority of what you're doing is now being automated by large language models. The fundamental shift we're seeing really is those jobs being automated. We've already seen it in software engineering. Crazy. That's like the best example of stuff being replaced. We're seeing like hiring pretty much tanked a lot of software engineering roles. Anything in the knowledge economy essentially is being replaced. For now, those really safe jobs are the ones that we traditionally thought would be replaced first. Anything where you sit in front of a computer pretty much is not safe.
Hello and welcome to the Knownness podcast, the Vault of Knowledge. Today, my guest is Frank Crossley. With a background in software engineering, he has been a senior associate for PwC. He is the co-founder of TheAX.ai, a powerhouse seeking to optimize consultancy through AI. My name is Naseem Reski. Welcome to the Vault of Knowledge. Explain consultancy to me like I'm 5. What is it?
Okay, so I'm not actually a consultant, so I'll do my best. But essentially, consultancy is providing expert insight to your clients and giving them essentially like assessments and like benchmarking initially, and then giving them actionable insights to do stuff. And then again, assessing them and see if they've improved, essentially. So it's like structured advice in one word.
Yeah. And you used to work with that back when you were at PwC, right?
Yeah. So I did like some consultancy work, but I was mainly like in the software engineering space. So
Gotcha.
That's really what I did. So
5 years at PwC, what makes you think AI can take over what they do?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think there's probably... we're seeing like a fundamental shift with AI for like the big 4. There's lots of stuff in the news about it. I mean, you've got like hiring declining pretty much because of AI. But essentially the issue is these big firms are wrapped up in process and like bureaucracy, red tape, and it slows down creativity. They also have like knowledge that other people don't have, whereas with AI, what we're seeing is like, this knowledge become available to everyone, and suddenly things that only the big firms could do, small, more agile firms can do.
I see.
So you're seeing like a kind of revolution and like a big restructuring in the industry. So yeah, there's a lot of repeatable processes which can be automated. And essentially what we're seeing is, smaller teams that can move faster, being able to have like a larger bandwidth that traditionally only the larger firms could have.
Gotcha. Empowering consultancy firms and knowledge-based businesses to unlock the potential of AI. Can you tell us what this means, Frank?
Yeah, so that's you got that from the website, obviously.
Yeah.
So let me just caveat this with our website is being redesigned.
Gotcha.
But essentially, just say it one more time for the camera so everyone gets it.
So for the cameras, empowering consultancy firms and knowledge-based businesses to unlock the potential of AI.
Yeah, so this ties into another thing we say, which is like productizing consultancy.
Yeah.
So essentially, you have like a problem with consultancies where their knowledge may be kind of strewn out across like multiple different places in different pieces of software. Maybe they don't have like their framework all together in like one place. And essentially what our platform does is help consultancies upload their domain-specific knowledge and build some like AI brain off of that.
Gotcha.
And then turn their kind of maybe broken processes or that are not very repeatable into repeatable, scalable solutions. So that it's very easy for them to say to their ideal customer profile what exactly it is they provide. And then the TheAX platform be the basis for that.
And is this with the usage of AI? To develop
specifically
that, right?
powered by AI. Yeah.
Okay. And is this something you have to develop yourself, or was what was the process of building that over time?
So the process of building it was, it's kind of weird. So I mean, we could go back a bit. So before TheAX, I had another startup called Teachify.
You mentioned Teachify, yeah.
Teachify, yeah, with my co-founder Ikram, he also worked at PwC. We went to university together. And that was really when like GPT started to take off and OpenAI and all that stuff, the LLMs. And we saw like a big gap in the market, or he saw, I should say, he'll tell me off for that. It's his idea, yeah. To basically help education. So basically what we did was generate teaching resources. And then over time, we developed methods to make it specific to the different exam boards in the UK, such as OCR, EdXL, AQA. And essentially what we had is if you look at kind of like the meta structure of that and zoom out a bit, what you had was, speaking to the mic, what you had was,
Mr. Producer's going to tell you off.
What you had was an AI that was an expert in a specific domain and then could assess people in a specific domain. And that basically is a lot of consulting as well. So at the same time, we were networking with Rob, our CEO, and he had like a similar idea around consulting, and it very naturally, what we're doing at Teachify, a lot of the systems and processes we had built naturally had another use in consulting. So it kind of branched out into consulting as well.
Gotcha. So that was kind of like the origins, the basis. And it's a bit of like a natural progression onto, TheAX.ai.
Yeah, what I should say though is definitely Rob's idea, our CEO. Like,
you don't give him the credit for it.
Yeah. He's a very smart guy. He's been in consulting for a very long time. And he was kind of thinking about the idea of TheAX for many years. And just so happened that we kind of had some synergies there.
Yeah. And from what I'm seeing, now there's so many different like AI models out there. You've got like Gemini, you got ChatGPT. There's the Chinese one that got a lot of controversy. What was it called?
Deepseek.
Yeah.
There's a bunch now though. I forget all their names because they're just like coming out all the time.
Yeah. But there's a WhatsApp one, the Meta.
Yeah.
That's really annoying.
Yeah, Meta. So I think that's Llama under the hood, or Gemini. I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But yeah, I think with that. That's a bit of I don't know. It's kind of stupid the WhatsApp thing.
Because when you go up to search something, it just pops up.
Yeah. Because like the whole AI thing is a bit of a bubble. So I think this comes back to another theme, which is focusing on the actual value that your AI systems deliver.
Yep.
I don't think it's much help like within your WhatsApp messages having like asking some AI like how to bake a cake. It doesn't really.
Or how's the weather? We can just check the weather.
It's kind of stupid. So yeah, that's one theme at TheAX where we're like super focused on.
Very precise and.
Yeah. Like looking at our ideal customer profile and constantly thinking about what it is we're developing in general or with AI that helps them ease their pains, basically.
Gotcha. And what does it take to build an AI? Because that's what you guys have done. You have a background in software engineering, is that correct? Yeah. So what does it take? Because when I think of AI, I in my mind, it still is a very big, complicated thing I don't understand.
Yeah.
So what does it take to actually build one?
Okay. Specifically like a large language model or?
Yeah. Because you mentioned off camera as well, a large language model. But if you can explain what that is as well. And
Okay. I've never built a large language model. So I can't really speak to that.
It's a big task,
but yeah, essentially it requires like masses of training, a lot of data. And then basically like human feedback in the case of large language models. So looking at outputs and then rating the outputs, like if they're good or not. But yeah, essentially like large language models are like, extensions of like neural networks in the natural language processing space. But yeah, they're very like computationally intensive. A lot of the time people are not actually building large language models, but what they'll be doing is like fine tuning ones. So changing some of the more like shallow layers of the neural network to achieve some specific task. Usually it's around like the tone of the output, or it might be some like specific use case, for example, to get it very good at like coding, for example, in JavaScript. So yeah.
It's kind of like a trial and error kind of model where you keep inputting feedback, inputting inputs. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Yeah. And then assessing the outputs and building it based on that.
Yeah.
And there's this word I keep hearing thrown around. AI agents. What is that?
I'm so glad you asked. It's almost like we planned this. AI agents. Yeah. So this is a massive buzz at the moment. So at first the buzz was like, like ChatGPT and just like chatting to an LLM. And now we're seeing a shift, so moving towards agent. So definition of agent is some AI that can perform tasks autonomously. You give it some goal and you give it a bunch of tools, and you say you can use any number of these tools in any order for as many steps as you like, and then you have to achieve some goal and tell me when you've achieved the goal. I think there's kind of been an overhyping of this, whereas because like AI agents have existed for a while, really, and even like at the very first instances of TheAX that we built like about a year ago now, we had an agent. It was driven by an agent, and that was on the assessment side. So it could take a client through a consultancy's assessment and then field questions on the assessment, do certain things within the assessment, and then decide when it was done. So that meets the criteria of an agent, like performing tasks autonomously with a bunch of tools that it can call at any time. But a simple example might be like a weather bot, and you ask it questions about like your location. It might have like two tools, for example. It could have access to like Google Maps API, and then maybe like the Met Office API and another tool. So it can get the weather and your location, and it can call those tools like in any combination, any amount of times to answer your question. So yeah, like it's like an autonomous task completing bot. Basically.
Yeah, it's a pretty good definition, to be honest.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And one thing I love as well is, the different names and namings of different startups. So what's the the origins behind your name?
TheAX, yeah. So TheAX stands for the accelerated experience.
Gotcha.
So the idea is you're accelerating your consultancy processes, whereas before it would be very stagnated in the old model and kind of like hard to productize and make it scalable and repeatable. So it's all about like speed and efficiency.
And going away from like being like slow and robotic and a bit more. Gotcha. And again, huge congratulations on the beta program launch in January.
Thank you very much.
Now, TheAX as it is right now, can you explain it?
Yeah,
its current state.
At the moment, we've kind of done our MVP, our minimum viable product. Although we like to call it our MLP, our minimum lovable product, because it is quite lovable. Yeah. It's really cool. A lot of design and thinking has gone into it. It also looks super nice. So we engaged a design team for that. But essentially what it does in this initial stage is provide kind of the initial discovery piece of consulting. And it does that in three ways. So the first thing is it is a place for you to build up your AI brain on what you do as a consultant and in your specific consultancy. And we do this through the idea of knowledge books. And then from knowledge books, you upload certain files and things that may be relevant to that specific domain. For example, like cybersecurity, say you're a cybersecurity consultant.
I wish.
It'd make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then you, off the back of that, create something which is quite important to us, which is a maturity model. So very often as a consultant, you're assessing your client on some kind of scale. And certain categories within that scale. So for cyber, for example, you might have like 5 levels going for how mature you are, from like initial ad hoc to all the way up to optimized at level 5. And there are certain definitions for each category. For example, like your kind of like maybe your threat tolerance or something. I don't know specifically what the categories might be. And then so in the end, you have like this matrix, kind of like this grid. And then for different categories, you would have different definitions off the back of an assessment. So the second part is the assessment. Using the maturity model, AI is able to generate questions for you for however many categories you want, and then deliver an assessment to a client and perform some analysis. And then you have that analysis available to you on the platform. And then you can instantly generate, which is the third point, AI reports off the back of that. So it kind of packages that process. And then where we're going next is, okay, how do we now, we've done the initial kind of discovery assessment. How do we do further assessment and benchmarking and things like that to actually get you the outcome that you want with your clients?
And now I have a two-part question. So have you approached businesses already with this startup?
Yes, we have. Yeah. So we have consultancies using it right now from a range of different industries.
Okay.
So yeah, it's quite a mix at the moment. Lots of different industries from like HR, marketing, and IT. So it's really, I think that's where it's pretty powerful, is helping consultants that like do something in a specific domain, a specific vertical. It's pretty powerful.
And then the second part to that is, when you approach these industries, what are their thoughts behind, something like this? Because I know there's a lot of stigma behind AI. So what are the kind of, are there worries, for example? Is there any like specific worries they have, or do they fully understand it, or do they find it difficult to understand?
Yeah. So I think there are worries around AI and specifically around data as well. Yeah, I think it really depends on the client that you're working with. I mean, some people, I think it's probably fair to say that most people today are using ChatGPT like all the time. I think
that's the most common one.
Yeah. I mean, like that's like now my search engine. I just use ChatGPT all the time for everything. So yeah, and I mean, what OpenAI like does with your data is kind of debatable. I mean, if you look at the terms and conditions, that's one thing, but then they've got pulled up for certain things, so I think it really depends on the client. But yeah, for us, it's really about making sure we have the highest possible data security for our clients and their clients as well. So it's quite important on our platform. Obviously, like we're B2B and we provide a service to the consultants, but then the consultants come on and then they may have several clients as well. So yeah, that is very important that we reassure our clients with the highest possible data security and then certifications, etc., to give them peace of mind. But yeah, generally with sort of AI platforms, you want to have kind of minimal data possible being sent to the LLM. If you can have your like own privately hosted LLM in some cases, and make sure you have like really clear like guardrails, etc., to prevent hallucinations, because that's another big problem at the moment.
Well, what is that?
So hallucinations are things where the LLM comes up with basically crap. That's like it's nothing to do with anything. So fundamentally, large.
Is this like when I've done like stuff based on like science or medicine? Sometimes they'll make up like sources, and you look at those sources and they don't exist.
Yeah. Like it means nothing, right? Yeah. So these are hallucinations. So fundamentally, LLMs are non-deterministic. So that means you don't really know exactly what's going to come out of them. So it's quite different to say like what we think about in like classical computing, where mostly
input output, and it's all predetermined.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for the most part. Whereas LLMs, we move into this like non-deterministic space. So when you're using an LLM to like underpin an application, that can it's obviously stochastic, so you have to be a bit careful. But yeah, there are certain things you can do, playing with like the temperature of the LLM, guardrails, etc. But yeah, fundamentally the LLM is a statistical model. That's what it is. I think people like they like kind of romanticize what like these big AI systems are, but it's just statistics. It's statistics we've had for forever. But has now become increasingly applicable to AI just because of the compute power we have. So we can finally use these large models at scale. So yeah.
Have you seen the movie Her?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you about that.
There goes your next question.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, because with that question, there's like an AI. Or, if you talk about AIs in general in media, AI programs and stuff like that, would you consider those like LLMs or?
AI programs in media, what do you mean by that?
So if I give an example of like, I'm trying to think of one other than Her. Let me think. Or if you know any yourself.
Well, like from movies,
like how they have
like the Terminator or something.
Yeah, so okay, for the Terminator, for example.
I can't actually rember the Terminator movie in detail. Yeah, I guess
is it
an LLM? Oh, it's like some intelligence.
How would you describe it as an LLM?
Yeah. So it's an interesting like philosophical discussion. Whether an LLM is actually intelligence. Does it understand things? Can it reason?
And can it begin to understand?
Yeah. Like, does it actually understand something, or is it simply predicting speech? Where it's quite it's quite an interesting discussion. because you could argue that simply predicting the next word, because that's what an LLM does. It predicts the next word in a sentence, essentially. So there's an argument whether that's actually understanding. And the one side of the argument is it is, because, for example, I could say, I'm going to steal an anecdote here from someone from OpenAI. But say you are doing a murder mystery, and say it's like Cluedo, and I say to you like, oh, who killed such and such in the kitchen, and you could do some reasoning and tell me who killed them. Whereas for a large language model, I could say like, the person who killed such and such in the kitchen was, and it predicts the next word and it gets it right. So that's basically some form of reasoning. So although it's predictive, it has done, there's some reasoning behind that to how it predicted the next word. So you could argue like, pattern recognition, stuff like that is how our brains work anyway. So essentially the LLM is doing reasoning. But yeah, I would say like the whole AI hype you see at the moment is all around LLMs being like the big enabler of this kind of intelligence
this bubble. And you did describe it as a bubble earlier. Do you think it's going to burst?
I think already it's kind of bursting a little bit, to be honest. It's interesting. I think we'll still see progress in the AI space, but perhaps not at the rate it has been of late. I think still AI is fundamentally going to change the economy and a lot of the ways a lot of people work, specific jobs. We're already seeing it at the moment. I think in my space in software engineering, there's kind of the most progress because you've got like software engineers kind of building this stuff anyway. And they're like, oh, can I automate my own job? And then it's like the only task they can think of is like programming. So let's get it to learn programming. So already we're seeing crazy progress in that space. So like, code bases with like 90 and sometimes 100% of the code written by AI. There's this big thing at the moment. I don't know if you heard of it, called vibe coding.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. So there's like these, this has been facilitated by certain technologies that have come out. For example, Cursor. It's so a bit of background. When you're programming, you program in something called like an integrated development environment, somewhere where you write your code, an IDE. Traditionally, people use stuff like Visual Studio Code from Microsoft. And then recently we had Cursor, which was like integrated with different LLMs. And it went crazy. Now everyone uses it. And there's some ridiculous metrics about Cursor, like the fastest growing SaaS ever or something like that. Don't quote me. So what's cool about that is, whereas traditionally maybe I would talk to ChatGPT and then have my development environment here and then copy and paste code over. Now it's all integrated in one place and I can apply the code directly to my file. And from this, it's basically, they have like an agent mode where the AI can make multiple one after the other edits to different files. So it's essentially just code for you. So you have like this flood of like non-technical people coming in and just like chatting to Cursor and getting it to make applications. And like for the most time, like they work pretty well. So there's this whole thing of like vibe coding where you just like accept everything the LLM says. And then if there's a problem, you just go back to the LLM and say like, fix this. And then you don't like touch any code. You
don't actually do anything yourself.
You never actually, and like there's been like some really cool applications with that. But I think now what you're seeing is like this kind of, this technical debt amassing in the industry where you're having loads and loads of, you have to be really careful with the AI generated code because it's very tempting just to never check it. Or even when you're doing like checking each other's code, which is traditionally what you do in software engineering, you have like a team member check it. Now you can get AI to check it as well. So you get like this mass kind of like outsourcing of critical thinking, which is really dangerous. So at the moment we're seeing like loads and loads of technical debt in applications where there's like really buggy, brittle code being written, and sort of like maybe like senior software engineers or like freelance engineers being pulled in like as mercenaries to like fix this code because it's a really big problem. So I think people are starting to realize that we've got to be careful with the AI generated code. And And also, and another thing about the LLMs is they're kind of slightly biased to adding code, which is generally not what you want to do.
Yeah, I see.
So the mark of what I think is like a mark of a good software engineer is how much functionality they can achieve with as minimal code written as possible, and potentially even deletion of code. That's someone who can think critically and be efficient in the code they're writing. But LLMs, they're all about just throw more code.
As much as they can do, as long as they get the output.
And, oh, that's broken. Let me write some more code. Oh, that broke again. Oh, more code here.
More to fix that.
Yeah. So they kind of missed the point with that. And then, sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but along the lines of AI generated code, the other thing that you see is you have to be careful about the AI generated code and
why is that? Why do you?
Well, So I think it comes back to this thing of like you it's very tempting to just let the AI do whatever it wants. And then when you have pressure, say from your product manager who's in charge to say, oh, we need to get this ticket done, it's very, very tempting just to let the AI run loose and do everything for you.
Gotcha.
And generally you can use it to do a lot of stuff. I think there are applications where it's kind of okay to let it do stuff. For example, like building like config files for you or like boilerplate code, etc. That's quite useful. But anything that's like application critical, you have to be very careful about.
Because it can't really replace the critical thinking. And then there's the issue with the hallucinations. And
So it's quite interesting. So I think this is what is happening in general in a lot of places is like, it's kind of like another stage of human evolution. Whereas before we had like tails or whatever. And then we didn't need the tails. And then the leftover piece is like the little tailbone that we all still have. Now that's happening with AI, like the part of your brain, say like your prefrontal cortex is kind of like shrinking because all your critical thinking is being outsourced to AI. And then eventually what you might have is the people that do kind of learn stuff and think critically about things just for fun to keep themselves sharp. And then like maybe the large majority of people who just do no critical thinking and just outsource everything.
Yeah,
so it's scary.
It is genuinely very scary. And we spoke about this in our last podcast as well, about the rising problem of school kids using AI for their homework. Yeah. And again, it removes that critical thinking element from it. But, I wanted to ask as well, there's a lot of terms with AI, such as LLMs. Are there any other, terms like that or subcategories of AI that you could talk us through? Yeah,
there's loads.
Yeah. I'm not very familiar with this.
There's loads of, what's the word?
Like subcategories.
Like these like 3-letter, shortenings and stuff.
Abbreviations and stuff.
There's loads of them. I mean, so
LLMs is the big one I've heard.
So there's like AI. That's like one big thing. And then you might have like machine learning within that. And then so LLMs are like a subcategory of a part of AI called NLP or natural language processing. So that's all about how we process speech and text. So it's very kind of like human oriented. And then LLMs grew out. They're like a subcategory of NLP. And probably like the most popular, but there's like a bunch of other stuff within NLP and AI, different algorithms, etc. So when people talk about AI generally today, they are talking about LLMs, but there's like this whole other plethora of different algorithms and cool stuff within AI. But fundamentally they're just like statistical models. So anything that is doing some kind of prediction generally falls into like the category of AI or it's made up of a lot of those kind of algorithms.
Gotcha. Yeah. And do you yourself receive any backlash for the usage of AI? Because I know recently there was a big controversy with like video games and movies using AI art. Yeah. Do you receive any backlash like that or anticipate it? Or?
I mean, the art is a difficult one because
that's a bit more. That's a bit more.
It's a difficult one. Like quite rightfully, a lot of artists are very annoyed about it. But I mean, it's similar like in the field of software engineering at the moment. I think like there's a lot of people that have spent years like learning to code
just for some AI to come in.
And like in one specific language, something really hard, maybe like C++, getting really good at it. And then out of nowhere, like these LLMs come along and then can automate like a large portion of your job. It's quite disheartening. And even like programming, I would say in a way is a form of artistic expression. You know, you're given like a blank canvas, your editor, and it's how you can craft something concise, efficient, and easy to read. So yeah, even I would say that is a form of art. But yeah, it is. There's been this big backlash at the moment with ChatGPT being able to generate images. You know, those been going crazy. Like people,
I've used
there's like the Ghibli Studio style stuff, which is getting people annoyed. And then also the action figure stuff, like people, you know, creating their own action figures and things. So yeah, I think I don't really have an answer to that, but I can understand the backlash.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think you can think of another example. For example, chess. You know, that was taken over by AI a while ago now. You know, famously had Gary Kasparov, you know, one of the world's best grandmasters being beat by Deep Blue, which like completely crushed him. And even that at the time, that was like a very big event. Like, oh, how is it possible that a computer can beat someone at chess? This very, very difficult sport.
A human, you know, with a human brain.
Yeah. And then over time, we realized that actually these are where like large language, where AI in general performs best is like these very domain specific tasks where it's very constrained, you know.
Which is what you guys do as well.
Yeah, like just like this 8x8 board, and then, you know, how the pieces move, and then
letting them be like an expert of that, and refining it and homing it.
Yeah, but even that, I mean, you still see chess like booming in popularity even today. So it hasn't really destroyed chess in any way.
It's not removing it.
People still do it for like the joy of playing chess and like the artistic form. So I think there's an element of that in most things. There's like an element of art and like enjoying your craft. So I think a lot of fields will still stay around for the most part.
Definitely, yeah. And like you said, it's like a new evolution, a new generation with this, you know, with the increase of AI. And it's a bit of like a Cold War as well with, you know, the Chinese ChatGPT. What was it? What was the name of it?
Deepseek.
Deepseek. Have you used
the Chinese one? I have, yeah. Deepseek is interesting because there's a lot of controversy over how it was built. Like supposedly it was like a very small team and of like basically interns that just built it in their spare time. You know, how much truth there is to that is debatable. But I think the good thing about that is you've kind of seen the floodgates open in like these open source models flooding the market, which is good because before it was kind of OpenAI who had the monopoly with their like closed source business model basically. And then very suddenly after DeepSeek came out, they instantly released their O3 mini reasoning model for like a fraction of the price of their state-of-the-art GPT. So I think it's really great for competition that these open source models are coming out of everywhere, you know, like, you know, obviously Llama, and then there's the French one, Mistral as well. I believe I'm pronouncing it right. Yeah.
Something like that.
So yeah, I think it's great that there are loads of providers out there. More competition is going to bring down the price of their services. So more people will have access to AI, which is great. And then lots of different types of AI as well. It's not just like one monopoly that has.
And more like specific types, like with you guys. Am I correct in saying it's just you guys currently that do what you do?
Specifically like
TheAX.
Like competitor-wise, you mean?
Yeah, competitor-wise.
Yeah. So there are a few smaller competitors that do very specific things. But yeah, in terms of like direct competitors with us, not really. But we're very aware that, you know, at some point there will be, because we're seeing this big shift in, you know, the big four like scrambling for answers of what to do. And like firms like McKinsey as well. They don't really know what to do about AI. So there's a lot of firms, there's lots of companies popping up now at the moment to try combat that. And a lot of like figureheads in the industry have been very outspoken about, you know, the reasoning models that are coming out from OpenAI can like deep research, can write reports. It's kind of automating a lot of these jobs that like McKinsey would traditionally do. So yeah, there's definitely like a bit of a scare in the market at the moment. So we're very aware of that. You know, we have to move fast in the industry for startups to be successful, which we do. We move very fast. So,
definitely.
No worries on our side.
Yeah. And you know, from what I'm hearing of your journey, it does sound very, you know, from Teacherify all the way to where you are now, very smooth and very much so a natural progression. But what I want to ask now is, what were the main difficulties that you guys have faced, or that you faced personally? in your journey?
The main difficulties.
Yeah, it's a bit of a personal question, and maybe there was many, maybe there was none.
Yeah, I think the startup life, and obviously you guys have had other like founders on your podcast before, so they'll probably say the same thing. Having a startup is quite difficult because it's very nobody cares about you at all in terms of your customers. I'd say like you really have to scream and shout to get the attention of someone. And generally people, you know, are way too focused on their traditional processes and stress at work. So they're not, they don't really care about your solution that comes across. And although it may automate, say, save them like 70% of their time reductions, it's very hard to convince them. So yeah, I would say like the main challenge with startups, is getting people to notice you, and then also like juggling your time as well. Specifically, if you have, like when I was working at PwC, I had Teachify startup at the same time. So that was like weekends and evenings doing that. Same with ICM. So that's quite stressful, you know, having the bandwidth for
what
all
was
of that.
ICM, sorry?
So ICM was my co-founder at Teachify. And then we started TheAX today. We started TheAX together. So yeah, like time management is a big problem. And getting people to pay attention to your product. And then also like being quite young as well. So although I like ICM and I may be quite technically inclined and maybe more bullish on things like marketing, etc. I would say it's really valuable having multi-generational teams. So in our startup at the moment, we have like older and younger founders, which is really cool. So they've got a lot of industry experience and they would have like a better kind of strategic understanding and can see more long-term than maybe the younger people can. And then I would say probably like the younger founders, are more like bullish and more embracing of changes in tech. So that works quite well. I think having, your strategic management side maybe being older, and then the development product team maybe being a bit younger, I think that works quite well. I would say that's like an advantage of our startup at the moment for sure.
And we're excited to see what happens next. When is the overall launch?
So we've launched basically already. So we're all like sell at the moment. So we're just,
and it's functional and
So mainly that it started with kind of like converting people from the beta program. So we had our pilot program, and then that grew into our beta program. And now that's ended, and it's mainly just like going back to those people and bringing them onto the paid subscription. And then other than that, it is pretty much very, very organic. I would say the growth of our platform at the moment, there's like a real need for what we're providing. Often I get like reached out to on LinkedIn a lot of the time, and people just want to chat, and then they're like consultants in a specific space, and then I'll do them a demo within like 20 minutes. They're like, wow, I really, really want to buy this. So there's definitely a need for what we're providing. And I would say we're not really even having to do much outreach at all. It's kind of just like organically coming to us, which is really cool.
Which is really good.
So now we're mainly focusing on, how we can build out the platform further, going to that more repeatable stage I mentioned, and also coming back to agents, which is my interest. So the different like agentic workflows we can add, and really expanding all those out.
And I saw a TikTok a while ago. It was like a wheel of different, areas of work, whether it be productivity, video editing, and like specific AI agents for each one. You as the founder of an AI agent, what's your favorite? I keep saying the word AI agent, but what's your favorite one?
I don't really know about many of them, to be honest. I think generally there's too much hype about them at the moment. I think people will start to realize that. But essentially, what the AI agents do is they add like a level of autonomy. I say the word. Autonomy. There we go. To things that have already existed, which are workflows. So there's different software providers that let you set up a certain workflow. Like, I got somebody completed my assessment on LinkedIn, now send them an email via my Gmail with, my email address. So these things have existed for a while, but now what you have is like the LLM layer coming over that, introducing a layer of autonomy. There you go.
That's the one.
So they've kind of existed for a while, but I would say, I think people are going to realize that they can be a bit dangerous because fundamentally the LLMs are non-deterministic. There's a very random element to them. So if you have like these massive workflows which are broken up with decisions by LLMs, what you have is like compounding error rates over time. So it's very important that you, when you're setting up your like agent workflows, that you dip back into the classical deterministic space as much as possible, like verifying outputs of the LLM and making the LLM adhere to some like type schema as well. So that's something else I can talk about as well. That's just come to my mind. So I would say, so I think a really, really cool thing about LLMs, I think this is one of the things that has changed the whole industry really and accelerated the growth of this kind of agent bubble, is the ability for LLMs to produce structured outputs. So these are things like, JSON schemas.
What is that?
So JSON is JavaScript object notation. So it's kind of like, it's the language of all applications really, how they communicate with each other, how a lot of APIs work, how you may pass information through the web, basically. So it's kind of like this bracketed, almost like dictionary kind of thing with key value pairs. And the like sort of early on, before LLMs could do that sort of thing, I remember like kind of like a good few years ago, maybe like 4 years ago now, I was trying to get LLMs to produce structured outputs. Very, very difficult. But now they've been like trained on more and more of that content from the web. They're very, very good at producing structured output, which is like perfect, because now what you have, if you can have an LLM that produces some structured output, you now have an input for many applications everywhere, basically across the web. So it's mainly, it's like created this glue now where LLMs can talk to a bunch of different applications, different APIs, etc. But I really think I would say this comes back to programming. So one thing in programming which I like a lot, there's kind of two camps where you have like strongly typed languages and you have like weakly typed languages, like for example JavaScript. So strongly typed languages such as Go, C++, Haskell. These are languages where you declare, when you declare a variable, say for example like var x equals 20, you also add a type annotation. So for example like var x and then some type annotation integer equals 20. And in other weakly typed languages, they may kind of just like infer that type at runtime. There's no like specific annotation.
Gotcha.
So this is kind of like, there's kind of two camps a lot of the time in programming, like people that prefer to program with like strongly typed languages or weakly typed languages. Generally the trade-off is with weakly typed languages, you can output code a lot faster. But at runtime, you're more likely to see failures. Whereas with strongly typed languages, you're forced to add type annotations at every point.
So it does take longer.
Yeah, it takes longer to write the code, but a lot of your errors are caught at compile time. So if it doesn't compile, something's wrong with your code. And then during runtime, usually things are smoother
and running fine.
So I generally prefer to code in these like strongly typed languages. Just because it adds like a layer of safety to your code as well. And I think generally we're seeing like a renaissance in software engineering of these strongly typed languages. People like now moving to programming languages like Rust, Go, and even with JavaScript, now we've seen that TypeScript, which is a typed version of JavaScript.
And that's
another programming language.
That's the harder one. What was the phrase you used? You said there's two types.
Yeah. So that's the strongly typed. Yeah. So I think there's parallels with this. Sorry, going down a rabbit hole now.
It's interesting though.
I think there's parallels with this movement to strongly typed languages with LLMs as well.
Yeah.
Going from like the free flowing kind of,
Inferred,
free output of text to now these structured typed outputs, which adds essentially this layer of security to a lot of the stuff that you do with LLMs. So no longer a lot of the time in these workflows will you get people just asking LLMs to generate text. You're asking them to generate some structured object that conforms to some type schema. So yeah, I think this is
which used to like better outputs and
I think this is like pretty revolutionary, to be honest. I'm surprised people don't talk about it as much as they I think they should. I think it's really, really powerful. And again, it's parallels from the programming space and software engineering. Is like, we already know the power of strongly typed languages, and getting LLMs to conform to some type system is super powerful. So I think like type systems really, really underrated. And I think eventually probably we'll have how we tackle this big problems with accuracy and hallucinations is essentially getting LLMs to operate in a typed ecosystem where everything they do conforms to some type.
And putting in these like restrictions.
Yeah, like restrictions. So it's analogous to like
like those what are they called, the things they put on horses.
Yeah. Essentially that. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Essentially like that.
So with large language models, how do you make them specific? Like with you guys.
Yeah. So like how you make them experts in.
Yeah. How do you make them experts into like one specific thing?
Yeah. So there's like a plethora of techniques. I'll start like kind of low level. So one thing most people do is like prompt engineering.
Yeah.
So really refining your prompts, adding extra information into your prompt, really making the prompt really clear, and adding.
I do that all with ChatGPT.
Yeah, like adding like domain specific expertise. Then I would say like a step up from that is RAG. So that stands
I've heard that term before, right?
Yeah, so that stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Gotcha.
So that is basically it's essentially a search technique which has existed for a while, but it's how you bring in certain pieces of information from a database into your prompt to then ask the LLM a question. So traditionally, how you do this is some kind of like vector similarity search. So essentially, one of the techniques in NLP is converting pieces of text into a numerical representation, which and the numerical representation has it encodes like the semantics of the piece of text, like for example, a sentence. So usually you will have like certain dimensions. So for example, a common length is like 1,536 dimensions to your vector. So that is like 1,536 comma separated values. And essentially each of those are different dimensions. So traditionally, like in like GCSE maths, you have your X and Y coordinates.
Yeah.
Your X and Y coordinates. And they mean certain things. So you might represent different data on those axes. So having 1,536 dimensions, those like all the different axes. And a good example of how this works is, for example, say you have on your X axis maybe something like a good example is like the word king and queen. The word king and queen may be represented in vector space. And if you do something like take the word king, subtract the vector for male and add the vector for female, you would end up at the vector for queen. So they're semantic representations of words and sentences. And essentially what we call like embedding text does is you take some text, for example, like some report, you chunk the text into maybe like certain paragraphs or sentences, and then you vectorize, you create some embedding, some numerical representation of that text, and then you store it in a vector database. And then essentially when you get a question to your bot or your LLM, what you will do is then create a numerical representation of that question. You will vectorize that question. So for example, like, who is the King of England? And then what you will do is you'll go to your vector database and you will perform a similarity search. So things like from like, normal maths, you could do things like the different rules like the dot product or the cosine similarity to see like the angle between two vectors. If they're like similar in length and closer angles, they have similar meanings.
Yeah.
And then so you will search the vector database for finding the most similar vector to the question that the person answered, pull that from the database and then feed that into your prompt. So for example, if I have in my database like all the kings of England, and I ask who is the current King of England, it will search the database, pull the piece of data from some report that says, oh, the King of England currently is King Charles, and then I'll feed that into my prompt. So I'm essentially giving, hopefully, the LLM the actual answer as during the prompting stage.
Yep.
So the output is going to be a lot more accurate. And essentially how what you do, you can scale this and have your LLM be an expert in a specific domain, just by storing all those vectors in a big database of like all your different documents that are relevant to your specific domain, and then essentially doing that vector search before every prompt.
I see. And is that kind of what you guys had to do as well?
Yeah. And then from you can also do cool things as well. Like a lot, again, it comes back to the typing thing I was talking about and generating structured outputs. You can also do things like get your LLM to generate raw queries to your database. So for example, if you have a SQL database with certain information and you want to, search that database, you can actually ask the LLM and say, I have a SQL database over here, generate me the SQL query that would bring this information from the database to answer the user's question.
I see.
So that's like another form of RAG. Yeah. And then, from that, the kind of the next tier is fine tuning. So that's also how you would make your LLM an expert in a specific domain. So you would take an already like pre-trained large language model. So for example, like GPT-4, and then do some training on a specific domain. So you might have, maybe you're trying to get it to talk in a certain way, like you wanted it to be really, really offensive. So you would give the LLM a bunch, like thousands of examples of example questions and then good responses. And then what you're doing there is training the kind of very shallow nodes in the network. And
refining them.
And then you can also give it like negative examples, like I don't want you to speak like this. And then so this way you're actually updating the weights and biases in the model itself, rather than just like feeding it information to like the vanilla model. So
like understand for itself.
So that's like the most extreme example.
Gotcha. So in honor of you coming along, we actually asked AI to ask you the final question that we have. So what ways? In what ways is AI reshaping manual roles across industry?
So you mean like manual roles? Just to be clear, it's like any like do you mean not manual labor?
Okay.
So
we can talk about that as well if you want to.
So
but just in general. I mean, we spoke a little bit about this.
I think it's really interesting. So it's kind of the opposite of what people originally thought. So many people think like, oh, intelligence, AI is going to take these kind of manual labor jobs, because traditionally those are perhaps wrongly thought of as low-level thinking. They're not.
So there's like mechanical arms.
Stuff like that. But in fact, what we're seeing now with the LLM revolution is those traditionally knowledge sector jobs now being replaced. So basically anything where for your job you would sit in front of a computer, the large majority of what you're doing is now being automated by large language models. So I think, the fundamental shift we're seeing really is those jobs being automated. We've already seen it in software engineering. Crazy. That's like the best example of stuff being replaced. We're seeing like hiring pretty much tanked at the moment for a lot of software engineering roles. And then, and anything to do, anything in the knowledge economy, etc., essentially is being replaced. And then I would say like for now, those really safe jobs are the ones that we traditionally thought would be replaced first. So yeah, like manufacturing, building, construction, a lot of those things where it's very hard for robotics to replace what you're doing. So, you have to be quite flexible. You have to like get into awkward angles to do like such and such over here or stuff. You have to be strong. Yeah. But even now we're seeing advancements in that place in the robotics space.
Not in AI.
Like you see like exosuits and stuff. Like people, I saw videos of people like doing climbs up mountains with exosuits on, and there's certain companies that do that. So like you expend less energy. But yeah, I would say it's pretty much anything where you sit in front of a computer pretty much is not safe. What that means practically, obviously you can't have like this mass displacement of like all these people that do office jobs. So I think what you will see is those jobs still remaining, just the definition of the job slightly changes. So for example, in software engineering, no longer is it you writing the code. Perhaps it's mainly architecture or DevOps, or acting more as like a senior software engineer or a tech lead who has an army of agents that do certain things for him, that do the bulk of coding. But I would still say a lot of the time it's not that black and white, because I think people often do forget, how do you make these systems reliable, repeatable with minimal error rates? That's the real hard part of it. It's not so much, can it do that thing? It's can it do it 10 times out of 10? And if the answer is no, then you're not really seeing replacement. So
it's not really replacing what we're doing, more so just changing how we work.
I'd say, a lot of it, now we're seeing like increasingly error rates dropping and them these systems getting more and more reliable. But I also think it comes down to fundamentally like how much people trust these systems as well. That's a big one. That's a big one we experienced at Teachify as well. Although we could generate these like state-of-the-art resources that perfectly adhere to all the different exam specifications and subjects, does the education system really trust it at the end of the day? Do teachers really
Especially
trust
with the stigma
output
behind it? The hallucinations.
So that's a big one. So there'll probably be like a big split of like the people that work with AI and use it, or the people that don't at all.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm gathering from what you're saying is our Mr. Producer might be, his job might be under threat. Or maybe even the guy making these Instagram reels or these TikTok reels. Maybe
watch out one day.
But yeah, that's all we have for now. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
For being an incredible guest. And AI won't be able to replace you. But yeah,